January 2nd, 2020. It is 11:13 p.m. and tonight at 7 p.m. I experienced what was called a rebirth workshop. A rebirth workshop over at a kundalini yoga studio in Scottsdale called Anahata. And holy shit, it was a rebirth, if that's what you want to call it. It was definitely something. Yeah. I don't even know where to begin on just trying to explain my own experience. I've taken a rebirth class before back in Los Angeles, and it was a great, great class. And most likely actually sparked the movement, the energy of my journey of really, truly self-healing, self-love, self-acceptance, self-understanding, self-respect. And what's interesting is I don't think I've actually found the meaning or the words for this journey that most likely started back when I took that last rebirth kundalini class years ago, back in 2013. But tonight I finally found the words. I finally found the understanding, the true level of forgiveness, the true understanding of the deep pain, the meaning of why I carry the anger that I've been carrying. I really didn't expect any of this at all. I actually didn't even have much time to think about this class at all this week today. Thankfully, my best friend Elizabeth, who is doing the Kundalini teacher training, Kundalini yoga teacher training with me. I apologize if I just said Kundalini. My teacher would yell at me if I would have just called it Kundalini yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan. Thankfully, she reminded me, and I went tonight. So I just like to rewind because I feel like for myself to understand the level of what just happened, also to be able to reflect on what's been happening the past several months, the past several years, the past several decades. But rather than rewinding that far, just understanding that like my last month, I ended the month extremely angry. Extremely angry. I was extremely frustrated. I felt like no one was understanding me. No one was respecting me. No one was acknowledging my feelings or appreciating my time. It all boiled down to me really understanding that I felt like no one really actually respected me, appreciated me, and which then caused me to want to yell and scream at anyone that I could, which typically is my mom, my husband, my girls, my siblings, of course, the people the closest to you. Yeah. So realizing that, being aware of my actions, I just started asking myself, well, what does respect mean? I have all these expectations, and yet have I looked at those expectations and asked myself those things? How do I show myself respect? And that honestly was the seed that was planted at the end of this 2019, was how do I show myself respect? And the question came when we gave our girls, our twin girls, their Christmas present, and it was a responsibility chart. And the responsibility chart is like, you get a star for brushing your teeth, you get a star for getting dressed, and you get a star for showing respect. And the girls asked, what does respect mean? And I sat there like, it's when you listen to the person. It's when you acknowledge the person, using all these big words, when you try to understand them, where you take in their words and then you actually sit with it for a little bit and consider it. Trying to find the language for 4-year-olds was quite difficult, but also I realized I was having a difficult time because I don't even know if I knew exactly how to explain to myself what respect is. So, with that said, I went to this rebirth class, riding in the car with my best friend, Elizabeth, just telling her about this journey, this planting of the seed of 2020, of asking myself to really find out, what does respect mean to me? How do I show respect for myself before I try and request it or demand it, is really what I was trying to do from other people. And that just doesn't work. So anyways, so then we go into this class, and there's like 60 people in this class, 60 kundalini yogis in this cram studio. We're half mat, so we don't even have our full mat. And we get to sit in the very back. And I remember my last rebirth class. One of the things I remember the most was that the woman behind me, the sounds and the noises that were coming out of her were so scary and so dark and so aggressive and full of pain and rage. And I felt like all of it was just hitting my back. And so when we got to sit in the back of the room with no one to my back, I was actually quite excited, which then lo and behold, fast forward, here I am wanting to do basically exactly what that girl did. I'll kind of explain why, but so we're doing these exercises, right? I mean, typical kundalini yoga, intense breath work, moving energy, rapid breathing, slow, deep breathing, different mudras, different hand gestures, standing up, moving. And the whole time, the teacher Savik is talking about going through the process of just basically gathering all our past hurt, all our past trauma, just gathering all this stuff to basically be rebirthed and to release it. And there were so much other things, that beautiful things that he said, but in a nutshell, this was a rebirth class. So just, I mean, it's the perfect description. You're being fucking reborn, and you can't really do that unless you've really purified yourself. Because when you are a baby in your purest essence, your most vulnerable, beautiful, angelic essence, you can't have that baggage. You can't have all that dark, hurt shit. And the goal is that by the end of this rebirth class, you are lighter. You are back to where you began, back to this pure, beautiful being, this precious thing. And so we're doing all this breath work, and then we get to a part, and I honestly can't really remember. I'm still kind of like stony from this whole experience, but we get to this part where he has us breathing and going through the process of this mantra that was playing in the background, of just going through the process of just digging deep. And he's just telling us, go deep, go through all the past hurt, go through all the past trauma, all the past pain, like just go through the cycles. And I think we were doing that for, I don't even know how long, 10 minutes? I don't even know how long we were doing that. And the whole beginning of it, I'm just kind of smiling, honestly, because I'm like, I feel like I've been doing this for a really long time. Like I don't think I have much to work on. Like, yeah, I know some of the things that happened to me, but like, I don't really feel like I hold on to any emotion to it as much anymore. Like, I don't feel like I give it as much power, my little brain, as I did before. But I was like, you know what, let's work through this process, because what I always do is I always set high expectations for things, and I overanalyze things. And my mantra for 2020 is to have no expectations and to just enjoy the fucking ride, the good and the bad. Just enjoy it. Enjoy it. So I go through what I know, and I know chakras. And so as he's talking about going through the past, I'm like, well, let's just start from the lower chakras, the root chakras, the red chakras, the feet, the limbs, the legs, from the ages of 1 to 7. And remembering what happened in my life from between the ages of 1 to 7. What happened? Like, I remember my grandma called me fat. I remember just being really insecure about my body. I remember never really feeling pretty. I started to remember some of these old feelings that I honestly haven't felt in a really long time. And like kind of going through the layers. And what was interesting is that because of the music was moving, I didn't really get to stay in that space very long. Like I just started traveling up. And so I came into the space of then my sacral chakra of my emotions and the ages of 7 to 14 and what happened there. And the loss of my purity, the loss of my innocence, and the beginning of my hurt, my self-sabotage, the beginning of my self-hatred. What was interesting is that then that emotional sexual trauma that I had in that space then started to carry into the rest. Then as I got to my belly space, where that's your self-confidence, that's where your willpower, I didn't have that. And that's developed between the ages of 14 and 21. And that's when I was drinking heavily and in my eating disorder and just sick, just feeding my gut unhealthy foods and alcohol and just drowning myself in toxic shit. And to then realize that as I got higher into the heart space, where you live in this area from 21 to about 28-ish, that self-love that I really realized that I never really truly developed. And I started to want to develop when I decided I was going to go into an eating disorder clinic and realized that I didn't want to live the way that I was living anymore and wanted to love myself, but didn't know what that even meant. And here I am now as I venture further up, into the throat, trying to find my authenticity, trying to find my voice, realizing that I've been carrying this hurt, this pain, this trauma, all that started from way back when. And there was some there's some like foggy spaces. Like I feel like there was things that happened in my root space, the red space, before the emotional trauma in my hip area, that I can't really remember. Things are kind of foggy. And so, so here we are. We're going through, I'm in my head going through the chakras, and it's just this movement of just remembering the past in this space, remembering the past in this space, remembering this space, remembering my loss of self-love, my people at work. When I worked at Zoomies, I worked with a bunch of guys, and I was one of the only managers, and just the making fun of that I would never be like one of the guys, and I just never felt like I was able to speak up for myself, and just being belittled for being a woman, and then putting myself in horrible situations, just never respecting my body, never respecting myself or my time, just no self-love, no self-respect, and I did not protect this beautiful vessel like I should have. So all this is just coming up, right? And I'm just watching it. I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now? What the fuck? And then all of a sudden he starts, Savik, our teacher, he has these huge gongs in the front of the classroom. I think he had like 2 or 3 of them. he just starts wailing and banging out the shit out of them. And before that, he was saying, like, gather all your past hurt, and join me in outer space. Like, send that stuff into outer space, into the ether, where it will not hurt anymore. So just this mental process. We weren't literally joining him in outer space. Maybe some people did, but it was just this mental idea of understanding that we're taking all this stuff, we're feeling all this stuff. We have to honor this stuff and realize it served its purpose. To be aware of these things, to accept those things so that you can truly transform and let it go into this ether of space for it to be taken care of and sent away. So he's saying that, and then out of nowhere he starts just wailing. I mean, this gong is humongous. I mean, this thing is huge. It's bigger than me. This thing's just huge. And he's just wailing at it. And the sound, the current was so intense and shocked my body every single time he hit it. It was actually quite scary because my eyes are closed. I was doing my little meditation, just peacefully moving through my chakras. And then all of a sudden, bam, boom, shit's fucking hitting the walls. It's fucking nuts. It's just, and I could feel the pulsation, the penetration, the shock, the wave just pounding at my body, just hitting me each time. And every time it would hit me, I just really feel these experiences, and everything that we worked on for the last hour and a half of class is now just rocking through every cell and part of my being. And I just bursted into tears. I just bursted into tears. The power was so intense that it like scared the shit out of me. But the interesting thing that came up was that he yelled like, "Now let it go." Like, burn it. Like, as this like intense energy is happening, just this, I mean, and you're in a room with 60 people and you could feel their energy. You could feel this vibration of just people finally letting this shit go. And he's just yelling, "Burn it, burn it, burn it." And the ripple effect of this gong, you could literally feel the breaking of this trauma that's been stuck in the limbs and the hips and the belly and the chest and the throat and the third eye and the crown. Like, it, you just feel your whole body just ripping apart this trauma that's been stuck. And it was intense. And I cried because when I was in the car with my friend, you know, we had a conversation earlier about how the crying of, and I hope it's okay for me to say this, but of when your daughter loses their virginity, or when your child, especially your girls, lose their virginity, it's just this moment of like mourning, like there goes your baby's innocence. And I cried in that moment because I felt like I was mourning my innocence, like my innocence that had been taken from me. And I, in that very moment, also understood why I couldn't understand I understood where my my low level of self-respect, of self-love came from. And as he's yelling, "Burn it, burn it," and he said, "Now forgive yourself, now forgive it." To be able to finally not hate myself so much for all my mistakes. to understand why I chose to put myself in horrible situations, to be with horrible people, to do horrible things sometimes. I then understood it. And by understanding, I could forgive it. But I couldn't stop crying because it was just, I really felt bad. I really felt bad. I felt like I was a mother crying for that little girl. Me, that little girl. I was crying for that little girl. And I cried and I was like, how do I make sure that these things don't happen to my little girls? How? What do I do? What do I do? Because that's really the stress that I have. My subconscious stress of making sure that things like that don't ever happen to my little girls. Ever, 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 ever. And in that moment, I had this thought of teach them and show them self-love. Teach them and show them self-love. And as soon as that thought came, it was like, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? Do I Google it? Do I go home and Google and look up a book that teaches self-love, that gives me a laundry list of things to do? And how do I do that? And then we sang a beautiful song as I'm having these thought processes of just, it was a beautiful way of getting out of that space of just being able to say thank you for what had just happened. And now let's come to this peaceful, pure space that we've created. And it ended quite beautifully, but I felt like I had something stuck in my throat. All I wanted to do was wail and scream and yell, just like that girl that I judged at the first rebirth. I was still judging that poor girl in the car on the way there, telling my friend about how that lady was freaking scary and obnoxious, of how she was yelling. And here I am now, fast forward, this is why you never judge. Fast forward, wanting to scream and yell in the most horrendous ways possible. And so when it all ended, I went to the bathroom and I bawled my eyes out some more. And I found myself looking in the mirror, which I thought was going to be really weird. But I looked in the mirror and I felt like I was actually looking at myself for the first time. It sounds weird, really corny, but I was looking at this very beautiful, precious little thing that was just red-faced and boogery nosed, and I looked at myself and I said, I love you. I respect you. And I vow to protect you. I love you. I respect you. And I vow to protect you. And in that moment, I realized that that's how I will teach my girls and myself what it means to truly self-love. It's about teaching yourself first that you gotta love yourself. You gotta learn what it means to respect yourself. And you need to you have to vow to protect yourself, because no one else will do it for you. You have to do it. Of course, if you're lucky, you'll have a family and a father and as amazing parents as I did that will do everything in their power to protect you. But even when you have that, in the end, it's going to be up to you to have to always protect yourself. And you're going to want to protect yourself because you respect yourself and you love yourself, and you will never, ever let anyone do anything different. You'll never let anyone disrespect you. You'll never ever let anyone show you anything but love. So I told myself that in the mirror. And then as I was driving in the car with my friend leaving the place, I was still crying, still a huge mess. But she said this thing without even knowing that I did that in the mirror. She's like, you should teach your girls. You should teach your girls that when they wake up in the morning or just do little exercises, That's something that she said she wished she would have done with her daughter more. But to look in the mirror and say the things that they love about themselves so that they can start to learn what it's like to be able to give themselves self-love, to not have to need other people's comments, feedbacks, suggestions, but to have your own and be empowered through that. And by teaching that self-love, gaining that self-respect, you will do nothing but want to protect that. So rebirth, am I this new person? Yeah, I don't know, but I definitely can tell that I've peeled off another layer, and that I'm in another space in my life, another level in my life of true awareness, of true acceptance, and witnessing my transformation. And that what the teacher said is that all that stuff, the good and the bad stuff, all that served its purpose. Served its purpose. So this is why I love Kundalini yoga. I know this is crazy, but this is why I love Kundalini yoga. Because I found Kundalini yoga in the process of the beginning of my transformation, my true transformation, my real transformation of where I decided I needed to work on self-love, self-healing. It was in the process of while I was in a outpatient eating disorder program in Santa Monica, California. And it was an accident that I even found that class. And I stopped practicing Kundalini yoga because too much was coming up. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle it. Because when you start to do these things, these practices, these therapies, these whatever the things we go to try and finally find self-healing, shit comes up. Shit that you've been suppressing and keeping in the dark for a really long time. And if you're not really prepared or in the space to really take that on, at least for myself, I wasn't. I decided I had to leave it. For 5 years, I didn't practice that until I had my girls. And I realized that I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of things that I couldn't figure out that was happening and still happening within me. And in order to figure that out, I needed to have something that would help me become aware of those things, to know what those things were. And the only thing that I have found has been Kundalini yoga. The yoga of awareness. That's what it's called, and it makes a lot of sense. So, rebirth, Kundalini yoga. This is going to be a hell of a year. It's already started out to be one, so I'm excited to see what else is going to come. And I'm just going to enjoy the process as much as I can. Give myself some grace now that I truly understand and really, truly understand why I am the way that I am and do the things that I do sometimes. Where my fears, where my worries come from. And then try and honor that by acknowledge it, become aware of it, and then move from there. And trust that I am in good hands and moving in the right direction, and that everything will work out the way that it's supposed to. So, all right, I'm going to bed. I'm going to take a shower and hopefully sleep like a baby that really does sleep through the night, because most babies, I don't know about, mine didn't and still don't sometimes. So anyways, love you. I love you. I respect you, and I vow to protect you. Satnam.